Hi, in this video I'll give a very quick introduction to the SlopOn, a new harness that I've been working on. So let's get to it. And let's start with a new project. Let's call this demo. So we have the demo project now. Before we can start chatting to the LLM, we need to add the LLM as an API provider. So we can go API providers, add, and I don't know, for some reason it gave Anthropic a different icon, but I'll change that later. After you've added the base URL and the key, you can do fetch models. Let's go with DeepSeek v4 Flash. Save it. By default, it keeps the reasoning high, just so you know. I'll set the context size to 256. The rest we can keep as is. We can simply add a new API provider, so we don't need to add the key again. We go Luna, so we can test the image. We say suppose image, save. Cool. So we can go start a new chat. We do need to configure bots before we can start chatting to those bots. So let's do that. But by default, when you create a new project, it will create some default bots for us. And we select DeepSeek v4. We select all the tools, except we don't want it to delegate tasks. And then we will choose LLMs that you can ask questions from. We'll select Luna for now. And then, but you can select multiple as well. So it'll create bot. Okay. So I've added Luna as an architect and DeepSeek v4 Flash as developer. So let's start a new chat. We'll go with developer. We'll just say hi for now. Let's start a new chat with Luna. We'll simply say hi. Because we didn't set the context for Luna, context size for Luna, so we don't know how much it is full. So we simply show the token usage. Whereas for the DeepSeek Flash, we did set the context size, so it shows the progress bar. Starting a new chat from the tab is the easiest way, but I rarely use it. Instead, I do prompts. So I create a new prompt, I give it a title, let's say demo website, and then I give it description, and then I run it with whichever bot I want it to run it with. So let's say if you want to do hi. So now that we have our prompt, we can simply run it with whichever bot we want to run it with. Let's do a developer. So we should get an answer back, and we can do architect. I'll just say for now, write me a long story, just so I can show. You can have as many sessions running as you want. They will all run in parallel. And that's across projects, so you can have multiple sessions across projects as well. So with prompts, they are reusable, so you can run them multiple times, but you can also save them as templates. So let's say this is the template. And if I save it and then save as this template, let's do test 2, save. So if I now create a new prompt, we could apply the template and it would just populate it. When I'm done with this prompt, I can simply do mark as done. I can do this mark as done, and then I can filter them and go back to the done prompts. Now, before we start working on a project, you would need to add it as a new source folder. So I'll do that. So I've added a new project, a new folder called source folder called frontend. It's currently empty, but you can have multiple. So I've added frontend and backend. So now if I go new chat, what folders are available to you. So the LLM knows it has access to backend and frontend, and on the disk they left here, but it could be on a different disk. And say for a single prompt, you want it to have only access to frontend and not backend. So what we can do is go to setting, source folders. We could simply hide backend. And now if we start a new chat again, DeepSeek v4 Flash, home, copy the title, and then what folders are available to you. It just says, yeah, just frontend. So you don't have to keep adding and removing the same folder again. You simply hide it. Next, let's look at tasks. So we create a new task, we get a title and description. Task is how I mainly work with SlopOn. That's if I'm working on anything that I need to commit, that I'll use tasks. So I'll give my prompt, my task a title and then description. And if you want, you can set up a work tree for the task, but it's optional. So we could normally start with research. We can simply say create prompt, and then it defines your task here. That's our task. But then the rest is the prompt template for research that the LLM needs to follow. But since there is no existing code, we don't need to do research. We can simply do a plan, and we'll just go with Architect Luna. So Luna came back with a proposal that would create a simple browser game, and it tried to read the research file. There is none. So with task you get scratch folders. So any artifacts that is related to the task but does not need to go into the project will get saved to the scratch folder. So I tried to read it, it wasn't there. Now it's saying that it's not there, the front end is empty. But it gave me a proposal, I'll just say approve as proposed. So now it has some more questions. I'll just go with the default for now. So Luna completed planning. It created an implementation plan that we can read. So I'll accept the plan as is. We'll go to the task again. So now that we have implementation plan, we can ask it to review the plan. So we'll ask DeepSeek to review this plan. The review by DeepSeek v4 Flash is done, and I happen to pick a provider that was like 8 tokens per second, but the result is approved with changes and some minor findings. So I'm just gonna do anything, and I'll straight go to implementation. So we'll do implement, and I'll do using Luna implement. Well, let's do DeepSeek again. So I run the implementation using Luna instead of DeepSeek, as the provider was slow. So now it's asking me to run this command. I'll approve, and it's asking to run this as well. So the implementation is now done. We can see there's an old file. I'll do showing Explorer. So here's the game. I don't know what this is. It's just clicking a target. So for the task that we just did, we can go to the task, we can go to each prompt and each chat for that prompt. And once we finish with the task, we just simply say mark as done. So for the LLMs that can read images, we could simply attach an image. I've selected the logo for SlopOn, and we can say describe the image. So for the Git changes, we could do refresh, but because this folder is not a Git repository, we could simply make it do Git init. The terminal integration is super basic. So we've initialized and we can now see the diff. Other than that, so we have general, the name and a default provider which is not currently used. You can specify a project level system prompt, your source folder. You can define the flow for the task that you want to do. And for each phase, you can actually edit the template that it uses. And then we have tool permissions. For the CLI, you can specify the auto-approved commands. Otherwise, it'll prompt you, or you could say auto-approved all, which is not what I do. And then at the end, you can add MCP servers. So let's add one. So I'll add Access Server, which is a free search for their MCP URL here. We can say AXA. So tool discovered, done. We can expand, enable, disable each tool, or we can enable, disable the MCP server. So like if I go to, that's the developer Luna. Now we can ask Luna to do an EXA search for current date. August 4, which is correct. So let's go to the app settings. So in general, you can change the LLM name that you would show in chat, and the compaction, auto compaction threshold. And if you prefer enter to send message rather than control enter, and the global system prompt. The connection is for the backend. The backend runs on Node.js, the front end runs on Flutter, and they can run on different machines. I'll also show that. You can have the theme for the code, API provider, and quick prompts. So you say test quick prompt. So now if I go to demo, start a new chat, and if I do test, it will type it for me. So saves me a bit of time. The projects you can hide and show in the navigation, the alerts, you want to turn them on and off, and the privacy analytics that we collect a little bit. We simply collect at random. We create a UUID for each install, so it's anonymous, and we simply collect 3 events: app installed, and a heartbeat every 20 minutes to collect active users. And if you opt out, that would also send an event and then not send any further events. So the backend is in Node.js, and that runs on every machine. But for the front end, which is in Flutter, we have native built for Windows, x86, and macOS, both ARM and Intel, and Debian Linux. But we will have more. We'll have ARM for Windows, ARM for Linux, and maybe a Flatpak as well for Linux. So here we have the front end running in Ubuntu, but for the backend for this is running on a VPS in the cloud. So I connected both so that it can install Docker from me on the remote server. So it installed Docker, configured Caddy for the website, using DeepSeek v4 Flash. And that's how I deployed it onto a remote VPS. I've restarted the app to show how I use SlopOn. So this is my dev build. So I wanted to show a few examples of how I use SlopOn, and this is my dev build currently. Before we start, I'll add a new project called Open Code, because we have Kilo, Klein, Codex, root code, so I didn't want Open Code guys to feel left out. So here's a quick example of the prompt I like to write. I give as much reference as possible, and I had to rerun the same prompt for the different prompts for the website to get a good result. Here's the prompt that I used to generate the logo, this logo. And it generated the logo. So this was actually created by Quen 3.8. It actually built a brand script that generates it in different dark mode, light mode, and different sizes as well. Currently, the project is still in beta, but for the most part, it works. That's what I use daily. I was a fan of root code, but with root code, there can be only one sessions, and you can't have multiple threads running. So I created it so I can have as many threads as possible. There are still some minor bugs, and there will be a lot more improvements, but I just wanted to get it out as soon as possible so people can test it as well. We will not be releasing the source code for the project on launch, but eventually we will release the code for the project on GitHub. That's it for this video. I hope you find the tool SlopOn useful, and thanks for watching.